Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Last weekend, I was at a going away party for a couple of dear friends. It was one of those beautiful occasions where the community they'd built from all walks of life came together over lamb and chicken biryani and plentiful cold drinks to enjoy one last afternoon in their lush backyard in University Hills. Paul, one of our hosts, a tall white Brit with beautiful blue eyes and a gentle smile, made sure that everyone met someone they didn't already know. And so he introduced me to John, a young Latino guy a couple years out from his master's in city planning at UT. You're both invested in Palestine. I bet you'd have a lot to talk about, Paul told us. My girlfriend and I sat down with John, and within minutes we began a conversation about different approaches to solidarity work. Activism versus advocacy, that type of thing. John said he considers himself more of an advocate, but he had been on campus on April 24th, 2024, perhaps because he'd been on campus on April 24th. He began recounting what happened on the 40 acres that day and how horrifying it was to see it all happen again on April 29th, as police dragged students down Campus Drive in zip ties through the wet heat, how he'd been in the group of students pushing back against police shields and weathering the terrorism of flash bombs and tear gas. As he spoke, tears began streaming from his eyes, and with surprise, he caught one with the back of his hand against his cheek. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to cry." He sat back in his chair. "No, don't be. It was overwhelming. It was an unbelievable time. It was so traumatic what the university did, what the cops did. It was messed up," we assured him. I wasn't actually in Austin on April 24th that year. I was out in Reno doing a departmental review at the University of Nevada. And that morning I had forgotten to silence my phone, so it had been erupting repeatedly in my back pocket. I thought I'd better check it when I had a break. "Where are you? We need you on campus now," my friend Ashley wrote. "We're under siege. They've got cops on horses all over campus. We're trying to hold the line to protect the students, but we're about to be overtaken." My blood went icy. I spent every free minute I had that day trying to coordinate people over text message to get others the support they needed. You see, just after October 7th, 2023, some faculty friends and I formed a chapter of Faculty and Staff for Justice in Palestine so we could support the students in their resistance. And in April 2024, the university and the police had forced us into a crisis point, not only arresting 57 members of our community, but traumatizing the whole campus. The university would escalate this crisis on April 29th when police again stormed our space, staging an hours-long confrontation with protesters and arresting another 79. But again, it wasn't just the 136 members of our community who were arrested who suffered. It was students like John, people of conscience who wanted to challenge our university and our government's complicity in genocide, trying to wrap their heads around the atrocities in Gaza. So when I read the scripture for today, my mind immediately went to Palestine. Because whatever your faith tradition or spiritual practice, finding ways to understand and cope with the inevitable suffering in the world is always a central concern. Peter, the Galilean fisherman and apostle of Jesus, offers us some universal meaning for suffering, which is worth noting here. 1, suffering is ordinary. 2, suffering is a shared experience, even if not evenly dispersed. 3, in suffering, we must remain clear on our values. And 4, suffering will end, and we will be better for it in this life, or if you believe in the one that follows. I should come clean and let you know that I'm not a Christian. I was one once, and I have a bachelor's degree in religious studies, so I've studied the Bible and theology and spent a lot of my teens and early 20s in contemplation. I arrived at different conclusions about what faith and spirituality mean to me. So when I read Peter's words, I wasn't compelled by the possibility of God's glory. I don't rest in his grace, but I do rest in the grace of beloved community. A few days after April 29th, 2024, I stepped foot in this church for the first time, arriving as a representative of faculty and staff for justice in Palestine to the library, which was that night a crammed room of weary students who'd been arrested the previous week. Now, sure, there were some dyed-in-the-wool Marxist and anarchist bros who'd been arrested before for their civil disobedience and whose righteous rage permeated the thick air. But mostly what I saw were a bunch of scared teenagers, some with visible bruises, others with wet eyes and pink cheeks, many still donning their keffiyehs in subtle solidarity and protest. I knew I didn't have words of support that I could back with actions that would make things better. I couldn't assure them that they wouldn't be punished by UT, that some of them wouldn't get expelled, that their arrests wouldn't stay on their permanent records, that most faculty would be even remotely understanding or flexible with them as they dealt with the aftermath of their trauma. I couldn't assure them that their parents or that their friends would be supportive and understanding. But I could assure them that we were in a safe and sacred space together, that this house was their house, that you had opened your doors to them as an act of faith and solidarity and love. I could assure them that a small but tenacious group of faculty and local attorneys was going to be with them every step of the way as they navigated UT's disciplinary process and whatever legal ramifications might follow. And I could assure them that I was proud of them, that they had done the right thing, that they had righteously faced the beast of imperialism as it manifested on their doorstep, that it is always right to resist injustice, to insist not in our names, and most importantly, that all we have is us, so we must take care of us. We're approaching the 4th anniversary of the horrific massacre in Robb Elementary in Uvalde. And in a despairing but clear-eyed reflection on what it all meant at the time, my dear friend, the poet Jesus Valles, reminded their social media friends that the police, elected officials, our institutions will not protect us. Only we protect us. All we have is us, they concluded in their post. And though I think I already lived by that adage, it's been more intentionally my refrain ever since, everywhere I go, and it's the refrain I want us to meditate on here in my remaining minutes with you. Where do we turn when we suffer? When we witness suffering that we cannot tangibly intervene in? Look to your left. Look to your right. Peer over your shoulder. Place your hand on the shoulder of the person in front of you. We must turn to the grace of our beloved community. All we have is us. But we must approach the self and the other with the kind of compassion that only comes from experiencing the world in recognition of what Thich Nhat Hanh called interbeing, the inextricably interconnectedness of reality. This, of course, refers to the ways we're connected to the soil, to the plants and animals, to the weather, to the air, but also the way we're connected to ourselves and to one another. I've been reflecting on this as I've been reading and rereading an essay by my dear friend Khadir Shafi, a queer feminist Palestinian activist and mindfulness practitioner who lives in historic Palestine. I want to share her words with you at length. She writes, "To be Palestinian is to know pain not as a private experience, but as a shared condition, inflicted deliberately across generations on a people who did not stop loving their land, their children, or each other. When I encountered the Buddhist teachings on compassion, something in me recognized them not as a revelation, but as a confirmation, a language for what my people had always lived. What the texts gave me was not the knowledge of suffering, but a framework for understanding how that suffering could become a direction, a movement, a practice. She goes on, compassion is not an emotion you hold at careful distance. It's what happens when you stop protecting yourself from another person's reality. When something in you cracks open and makes space for them inside you. Not sympathy, which observes from across the room. Not empathy, which imagines from a safer distance. But this. Their suffering enters you and takes up residence. Their cold becomes a cold you cannot unfeel. Their hunger becomes a hunger that will not let you sit still. From that place of breaking open, the question arises not as an intellectual exercise, but as an urgency. What is mine to do? This question is not a gesture or a performance. It is a response to a call you cannot unhear from someone who is now in some irreducible way inside you. That is where compassion stops being something you experience and becomes something you live. Not gentler, not more peaceful, but more honest. More awake to the thread running from your daily choices to the bodies of people you may never meet. As Khadir makes plain here, all we have is us because all we are is us. And therefore, when we ask, what is mine to do, we must answer by discerning what we can do to alleviate suffering. Our own, of course, but that of those who are also us and who suffer more. For Khadir, the direction of our compassion, of our recognition of interbeing, is to choose in our daily lives to participate in the boycott of the Israeli state, institutions, goods, and cultural events. Since 2005, Palestinian civil society has asked the world to participate in the boycott as an expression of our solidarity, a call that continues in its urgency as Israel's atrocities persist in Gaza, Iran, and Lebanon. You may not be ready to heed this call yet, but you were ready to respond to the needs of your neighbors across the street who were responding to it. And that collective act of compassion and your continued support of Palestinians and other groups who are no longer welcome on campus is a reflection of precisely the thing I'm suggesting we need to alleviate suffering. All we have is us. All we are is us. What is ours to do? We are but a gathering here, some dozens among 7 billion. We are parents and partners and friends, bosses and workers, coaches and mentors. We have bills to pay, loved ones to care for, meals to make, traffic to sit in, gym memberships to try and use. And we only have 24 hours in each day. And we are, in each day, to different degrees, experiencing and witnessing suffering. What is yours to do amid all else you have to do on any given day? Turn to each other. Decide together. Live in a compassionate and clear-headed way in the service of others to whom you are inextricably bound. That is the lesson I take from Peter, from my friend Jesus, and my friend Javier. When I left that going away party last weekend, John and I hugged. And it wasn't one of those quick hugs you give to someone you just met, but like a full-bodied, tight embrace. We didn't know each other, but we had taken the time to recognize the suffering we'd shared. And what was mine to do in that moment was to see him and to hold him, and now to foster a relationship with him born of our shared love for Palestine and our sharing of this community and this world. More of that is what we need, more residing in the embrace of our beloved community.